Hi, everyone. I'm just going to get us started on time here. I'm sure there's going to be some more folks trickling in the next minute or two. But good morning and good afternoon to those of you, whichever coast you are on today. Thank you for joining our plant-based certification webinar, where we're going to be going over ingredient compliance and critical control points for the SCS Plant-Based Certification. My name is Holly St. Jean. I'm a project associate for the product claims team at SCS. And I'm going to be doing the introduction here and then handing it over to my colleague Tony for the rest of the webinar. Before we get started, I just want to go over a few logistics. Everyone will be in listen-only mode. During the webinar, please type your questions into the question box, and we will answer them during the Q&A portion at the conclusion of the webinar. This presentation will be recorded, and you will receive a link to the recording after the webinar is over. So I'm just going to jump into a little background on SCS. And this is just the general overview for the webinar today. So SCS is a certification body, for those of you who don't know, located in California's Bay Area with satellite offices around the world, and has been a leading organization in the movement for a safe and sustainable food system for over 38 years. We have over 15,000 clients from over 125 countries, with employees based across the globe as well. SCS offers an extensive suite of food safety and sustainability services, and also provides public training and on-site training at customers' facilities. And we also offer self-paced training for things such as HACCP and Global GAP in both English and in Spanish. Our auditing services include the GFSI benchmark certifications, such as Global GAP, SQF, BRCGS, and Primus GFS, which you can see here in the second and third row. And in the top row here, it features several product claim certifications that both Tony and I are involved in, such as non-GMO, gluten-free, plant-based, and USDA organic. And before I hand it off to Tony, just to reiterate again, feel free to put any questions into the chat, and I will be compiling them, and we will go over them at the end of the webinar during the Q&A. And now I'm going to hand it over to Tony.
Thank you so much, Holly, for that introduction. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining us in today's look at understanding critical control points and achieving ingredient compliance for SCS Plant-Based Certification. Like Holly said, my name is Tony, and I'm an associate on our products claims team. I've been on the products claims team now for about 4 years, which has definitely flown by, and work, of course, on our plant-based certification, as well as our SCS gluten-free certification, non-GMO project verification, and pesticide residue verification program. Today, we'll be focusing on our newest certification offering, the SCS Plant-Based Standard. The SCS Plant-Based Standard was created to give consumers assurance that when they purchased certified products, they can be confident in ensuring that the claims plant-based is true and not just a label. Consumers are looking for more power in their purchasing decisions and want transparency in the brands and products that they shop for. So that is why we find certification important. With a recent Nielsen's study, almost half of consumers are wary of self-made statements on food packaging, believing them to be misleading. When you instead add on a certification to make that same claim, such as plant-based or another free from label, such as non-GMO or gluten-free, consumers were shown to have a more positive outlook on that product, often considering it healthier and of higher quality. As the supply chain becomes more and more opaque, consumers have a desire to know more about what is in their food. Using a label such as SCS Plant-Based does give consumers that confidence and makes a more positive outlook on your brand in their eyes. Today, we are seeing a huge amount of alternative meat and dairy products on the market. In the early days of the industry, it was easy and obvious what products were true alternatives or not. But now consumers can find the amount of different options overwhelming and confusing. For example, let's look at protein sources. There is your animal-derived whey protein or egg white proteins, etc., etc. But now in today's market, we have so many alternatives that those standard animal-derived products that consumers may be looking for, such as soy protein, pea protein, etc. The list just goes on. Shoppers and stores want a way to easily tell what is what when looking at aisle after aisle in their local store. As consumers want to know what it is in their foods, we in the industry can help consumers make choices a little easier by being more transparent. And consumers are showing their desire for new products with their purchasing decisions. In just a 3-year period from 2018 to 2021, the plant-based food sector grew an estimated $7.4 billion. Plant-based meats have grown at an estimated 3 times in that same period. And in the past 2 years, plant-based milk has grown an estimated 33% with the rise of oat milk and pea milk, making a especially large splash to our consumers. In order to break into this market, you want your customers to be confident in the integrity of your products. The SCS plant-based standard can be the tool that will let you capture this growing consumer demand with your products. So now I know that the question you have been asking yourself the whole time is, how can you get certified? Well, first, have a product. The list here is the products that are eligible for certification. So you can certify the following: processed foods. This would include any food that has been processed and is not in its raw form. Ingredients. This can be anything that goes into finished goods, such as emulsifiers, flavors, colors, etc. The next category is supplements and homeopathic remedies, so items maybe such as multivitamins, oils, etc. Topically applied items that are designated for human use. This can be things such as body lotions, oils, skincare, etc. And the last category that is eligible is going to be pet food. So this is for any pet that would be considered a domestic animal, such as dogs, rodents, birds, etc. So in order to keep the integrity of the standard, we believe that what is best is to only certify products for which there are alternatives on the market that may contain animal-derived ingredients. So this means while we may not certify a pre-chopped bag of strawberries, we would be happy to certify your rice milk or your smoothie mix, as those have commonly acknowledged animal-derived alternatives or are often made with animal-derived ingredients. We do this to ensure that the label does not muddle down with being placed on obviously plant-based foods or products. With that, there's also a list of items that cannot be certified under the standard. We have, of course, any controlled substances under a country's applicable law, medicines, drugs, other products that we won't certify again are going to be products that do not have any alternatives that may contain animal-derived inputs, any primary products that are not processed. And for the definition of the standard, we do consider any item that is frozen, cut, freeze-dried, etc. as unprocessed. And lastly, any product that may contain an animal-derived ingredient, so may contain animal, or may contain milk, may contain butter, whatever it is on the label, since if there is any chance of that being in the final product, we cannot have your products be plant-based certified. So we do have 2 different classifications of products. The first is going to be products for human and animal consumption. So any product that is ingested. And the second is going to be a product that is considered body care. So again, this is going to be lotions, body oils, etc. So depending on the category you classify your products in, we require that the weight percentage of all of the ingredients in the product, 95% and 50% respectively, must be plant-based, excluding any water or salt you add directly to the product. We wanted to put this requirement in our standard to reflect that the term plant-based should mean that the products you certify truly are from plant-based ingredients. It is important to us to have consumers be confident in products that are certified to our standard are indeed plant-based. So that is why we have these ingredient weight requirements. For the purposes of the standard though, algae, seaweed, fungi, and microbially derived ingredients, maybe such as like a nutritional yeast, though not technically plant derived, may be used in plant-based products and are included in the minimum weight percentage of plant-based ingredients for both categories of products. And so just as a reminder, since it wasn't explicitly mentioned earlier, the SCS plant-based standard has 0 tolerance for any animal-derived ingredient being used in products. This means we can't allow for even very small amounts of animal-derived ingredients, such as honey, shellac, bone jar, etc., in your products or in the production of your products. So this includes all non-microbial life forms, such as any land-based animal, water-based animal, insect, bird, etc. So how does certification work, you ask? The process of getting certified takes somewhere around 8 to 12 weeks, we find on average. Every client is different though, and depending on how motivated your team is to getting the required documentation in place, resolve any findings, and how quickly you can schedule your on-site inspections if they are required, this time can vary widely. We are committed to helping you reach your desired project timeline though, and can work with you in meeting those goals. We do always recommend giving as much time as possible to complete this certification, as delays can happen and we can never guarantee a timeline. So this is the process in overview. So first, we're going to start off with scoping, which will be done with our initial sales team. They will get the amount of products you wish to certify and the amount and classifications of facilities you have, which we'll go over those classifications in the next slide. With your scope established, they will send an initial invoice your way to kind of kick things off. After that, you'll meet our coordinator team, who will help you with our onboarding documentation. This is where you will give the formulation of your products and define what category each product you're certifying is in, which again would be either products for human and animal consumption or body care products. After that, you'll be passed on to your auditor, so perhaps me, who will meet with you in an orientation meeting where you will establish your scope, discuss the next steps, and then they can work with you to point out any problem areas you may have in your products or in your facility. After the meeting, your auditor will then request specific documentation to start the review of your products and your facility. Once that process is started, we will then be able to either move on to your facility desk audit or work with you to schedule your virtual or on-site inspection, depending on which one is required. After the review of your ingredients is completed and your facility review or inspection has been done, you will be moved on to a technical reviewer who will work with you to correct any non-conformities found during your audit. If your audit did not come up with any NCs during that time, you will skip this step. Finally, once all NCs have been resolved with the reviewer and all other items that were submitted show you have achieved full compliance with the standard, you will be approved and considered certified, and you will get your final certificate of compliance. This certification is an annual process. The first year is generally the most time consuming, with renewal audits tending to be of a lower workload on our client side over initial audits. Our team does reach out to you yearly to start the renewal process, generally about 3 to 5 months before your certification expires. So next, we're going to go over the different types of facilities. We divide facilities into 3 separate classifications. The first is going to be a dedicated facility. So this is a facility that does not handle any animal-derived ingredients within its walls. The second type of facility is a non-dedicated facility with an allergen control program. This is a facility that does in fact handle animal-derived ingredients within the facility, but its animal-derived ingredients are within the scope of its allergen control program. This means that the facility must prove plainly that all animal-derived inputs used within the facility are a part of this program. The last facility type is a non-dedicated facility that does not include all of its animal-derived inputs used in its allergen control program, or the facility itself does not have an allergen control program. Your facility types can change over time depending on how your facility changes. So just be sure to update either your auditor or your coordinators throughout the time that you are certified. These facility classifications matter, as it will change what type of audit we will conduct on your facility. The first 2 classifications of facilities, and this is going to be dedicated and non-dedicated with allergen control programs, are eligible for DES audits. These types of audits are simpler, with your auditor requesting information on your facility's processes and records and reviewing your submissions at a later date. The third classification of facility, which is going to be a non-dedicated facility with no allergen control program. These types of facilities do require on-site inspections. These inspections can be either handled virtually or on-site, depending on the year of your certification. In all initial year's audits, we will be conducting a virtual inspection where you will take your auditor around on a device of your choosing, and we will evaluate your facility and review all of the applicable program documentation we need to evaluate for the audit. In your second certification year, we will visit your facility on site to physically inspect it. Moving forward then, we will alternate every year with a virtual inspection and a physical inspection. These inspections must be agreed upon in advance with your auditor. If you sign up for another SCS product claims program, such as SCS gluten-free, for example, we may be able to even combine the gluten-free and plant-based inspections at the same time with the same auditor, definitely reducing your costs and the time spent. Generally, inspections take between 4 to 6 hours, so always keep that in mind. So now let's take a look at critical control points, or CCPs for short, as I'll mostly reference them moving forward. CCPs, as considered by the SCS Plant-Based Standard, are steps in the food production process in which there is a risk of animal-derived ingredient contamination. For each step, preventative measures can be put in place to reduce this risk. So how do you identify your critical control points? The first step of any review is to identify your facility's process flow. With a thorough understanding of your process flow, we will be able to better create visual representation of your process, which will help in identifying the next steps of identifying all your CCPs. The second step would be to identify and name any hazards that are found in your flow and to prioritize them by the probability they will occur and the severity of the outcomes if they do occur for each step. So as the first step in identifying your CCPs, creating a process flow is a foundational step. The SCS plant-based standard does require that you have a process flow established and recorded. There may be many ways to fulfill this requirement. One of those ways is to establish a flow chart like the one shown here. Although this is a little basic, but definitely something like this here. This chart is oftentimes included alongside other requirements in your HACCP plans or your hazard analysis and preventative controls for FESMA, and those plans can be presented in lieu as well. Additionally, you could describe your flow in, say, like a procedure, or even submit CCP tables for all hazards for this requirement. So here we see a sampling of common areas in a manufacturing process that could be considered a critical control point for your consideration. For every facility type, there can be different areas of concern in regards to what are in fact CCPs within your process. You'll notice here that the dedicated facilities have the least CCP areas of concern, whereas non-dedicated facilities have way more. Of course, your facility is unique and all production processes differ from one another. So your list of CCPs found in your evaluation of your process may come out way shorter, way longer. It just depends on what's going on in your facility. So here is an example of how to establish a chart for the identification of your hazards. So the first part here of your chart is to identify the step of your already established process flow that this hazard would occur in. The next part is to explain what the potential hazard could be. This may be pulled from past experiences, from anticipated hazards, from pre-made lists. However you would pull what those potential hazards are going to be, you will then list each one down. In the next 3 portions of the chart, you're going to include the likelihood of the occurrence, the severity of its effects of the hazards, and also its calculated significance, which we're going to look at in a bit. So let's take a look at an example here. So for this example, we have found a step in the process flow, which is going to be reworking of materials. I know not every facility may be using rework, but for the purposes of this example, we will use this step. This example facility is a non-dedicated facility, so animal-derived inputs are used. In this case, this facility was producing a plant-based ice cream product, but somehow mislabeling of a rework material lot of a dairy milk ice cream material happened. And so because of that mislabeling, it was then used in plant-based ice cream product. Very large issue. I hope we would be severely looking at our cleaning staff or our production staff here if this ever actually did happen. But anyways, for the purposes of this example. The facility has determined that the likelihood of this occurring could occur, depending on their own definition of what that means. And its severity was labeled as serious illness, as folks with lactose intolerance could be very negatively affected by this hazard. The significance was issued at an 8, as shown on the risk analysis matrix that we'll look at the next slide. It is the facility's responsibility to conduct this process for each hazard that is identified. Identifying all hazards is imperative to ensuring all CCPs be identified and control measures are implemented. All right, so here is our matrix. Your significance of each hazard is is determined by using this matrix here. To use this matrix, you identify the cell that fits the two categories of likelihood and severity. Looking at the top row, you'll identify the likelihood of a hazard occurring. So the options here are going to be common, known to occur, could occur, not expected to occur, and practically impossible. Your facility will need to make the determination on how often that hazard may or does occur in your facility. After that, you must determine what consequences a hazard poses. So the five options here are going to be fatally, serious illness, product recall, consumer complaint, and insignificant. The highest consequence that could occur if the hazard is not mitigated would be the one that you would select for both categories. In our example, the hazard was decided that its frequency was C, could occur, and the consequence was 2, serious illness if the hazard was not mitigated. That means box number 8 was selected in our example. Any hazard that is classified generally between 1 and 10 on the risk matrix is a significant risk and must be addressed in your preventative control measures. So once your team has identified those hazards, it's recommended that the highest risk item be the one to prioritize in creating control measures for this third step. You want to ensure that as much risk as possible can be mitigated by your control measures. The SCS plant-based standard does include some control measures in the requirements for certification, so being certified can help in this process. So finally, in the last step, once all your control measures are created, it now moves on to implementing them within your production process. While implementing these measures, you would also want to ensure and evaluate the effectiveness of your control measures in mitigating your risk. This is where your theory turns into action and needs to be accepted by all stakeholders to be effectively implemented within your facility. So going back onto another basic of getting certified, we looked at what needs to be reviewed with your facility and its critical control points. Now we're going to look a little bit at what we would need for your ingredients. So let's take a look at that. When we are evaluating products for compliance to the SCS plant-based standard, we do require some documentation from your ingredient suppliers to prove that no possible animal-derived ingredients or components of those ingredients are used in your products. So we call these, and super exciting name, I know, required compliance documentation. For this, we generally require one of two things. The first is going to be a spec sheet that's going to be from your ingredient supplier or manufacturer. These spec sheets should have a breakdown of the components of the ingredients, and if any of the components are plant-based, we would need to know how much of those are in that ingredient. And we'll show why that is in just a moment. The second type of required compliance documentation would be a plant-based declaration, which here it is. This declaration should be filled out and signed by your ingredient suppliers, and will give a breakdown of the ingredient that you are using into its different constituent component parts. This gives us an understanding of what that ingredient is and what components of it may be plant-based, and again, if any of the components may be animal-derived. Using this form, we can have the most confidence about the breakdown of your ingredients. So this is going to be the preferred ingredient compliance documentation we would like to receive. So since this is the most accurate way for us as a supplier to declare if something is animal derived or not. Again, it's not required that they fill out this form, but this is going to be the best way. to prove that all of your ingredients that you use in your products are indeed plant-based. So like I said earlier, I was going to give you an example. So here's an example of a formulation that we could accept. So this example is about a vegan gummy bear. Since the gummy bear is meant for human consumption, I don't think you should be spreading a gummy bear all over your skin, so we are going to eat it. It is required that the gummy must contain at least 95% of plant-based material. So in this example, the bear is composed of just 4 ingredients: agar-agar, cane sugar, fruit juice, and a flavor. And we know this because the client gave us a product profile that listed these 4 ingredients as the formulation of their gummy bear. So for this example, the supplier of each ingredient gave us a plant-based declaration. So we know what each ingredient is made up of. The first 3 are mono ingredients, meaning that they don't have any other components to them according to the declaration. So we know there's no further review of these ingredients. The flavor, on the other hand, as you can see, it's bolded here at the bottom, does have a few different components. So in this case, there are 4 of them according to the declaration. Of those 4 components, 3 were derived from non-plant-based sources. Since water is one of those, we do disregard that in our review. So we're just going to be looking at 2 propylene glycol and propanoic acid. Excuse my pronunciation of that. This flavor is based on a real flavor that we have certified. So I do just want to say that this is a case that does come up. Although to be fair, we do not have a gummy bear yet certified, but if you do have a gummy bear you would like to be certified, I would love to know, because I would love to try it. Okay, so we are going to evaluate the 2 non-plant-based component amounts as compared to in the final product. So since the propylene glycol was 80% of that flavor, and that flavor was 5% of the total product formulation, we just did a quick calculation that shows that the component, that propylene glycol component, is 4% of the total product formulation. The propanoic acid, excuse me, is only 0.5% of the flavor. So since again the flavor is only 5% of the total product formulation, the acid is only 0.025% of the total product formulation. So in total, this vegan gummy bear has 4.025% non-plant-based materials used in it by weight. Since the standard allows for up to 5% of inputs or their components to be used if they are not plant-based ingredients, this product would be eligible for certification. If the flavor was much higher in the product, though, we may not have been able to certify the product as plant-based due to the amount of propylene glycol. This was just an example of a human consumption classified product. Again, I don't think you should be putting gummy bears on your body unless that is what your product is. If we were to look at a body care product, such as maybe a lotion or a shampoo, that number shoots up to 50% allowance for non-plant-based ingredients. Again, we do not include any water or salt that you may add into that product. So I wanted to show this example to show that when you are submitting ingredients, we really do break down each ingredient to make sure no component of it is either animal derived or non-plant-based. When you are considering the SCS Plant-Based Certification, it does help to at least talk to your suppliers to make sure they're willing to give the information that we may need to ensure your products do meet the requirements of the standard. If they're not willing to work with us and do not already have documentation that is sufficient for us to evaluate these ingredients, we may not be able to certify that ingredient, and then we may not be able to certify your product, unfortunately. So with that, that was the end of our presentation today. So I'm just going to leave you with a few closing remarks of why you should choose SCS Global Services. So we are dedicated to giving you a high level of customer service amongst all of the certifications we offer as a company. Our coordinators and auditors like myself will work with you to give a detailed instruction and to give consistent feedback throughout your audit. When you bundle services with SCS, you can not only get a discount with all the services that you do get with us, but depending on the services you do choose, you may be able to get a cross-trained auditor that can handle your different audits at once. Again, just like myself and Holly, we are certified to audit to multiple different programs. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining in this webinar with me today. If you are interested in SCS Plant-Based Certification, or if you would just like to know about any other certifications we've talked about today, I will point you to our wonderful sales director, Ned Hallaby. Ned can work with you on establishing if your company and your products will even qualify for the certification. Again, making sure that your products are on that able to be approved list. And we'll give you kind of a rough breakdown of cost, probably better than I ever could. You can reach out to him directly via email at nhallaby@SCS Global Services. You can see here on the screen, that's NHALABY @scsglobalservices.com. Or you can also submit your information to us on our website, scsglobalservices.com. On the website, you'll also see other resources about all the certifications and trainings we do offer, which is more than 100. So definitely maybe take some time and drive around our website. So I am now going to bring back Holly. And Holly, I think I saw some questions pop up from some of y'all. So I think we have a few minutes to go through some of those. So would you mind helping me with that?
Sure thing. Great job, Tony. Thank you. Yes, we have a couple of questions that came through the chat. And if anyone else has any questions as they think of as we're going over these, feel free to pop them in the chat as well. So the first one we have here, a client or someone in the chat is asking, my company makes sweetened dried fruit that we are looking to get certified. You mentioned that the certification does not allow for non-processed food like dried fruit to be certified, but since we add sugar to the dried fruit, does that qualify for this label?
That's a really good question. And sorry, let me just quickly, I accidentally exited out of that. So let me just move it. There we go. So yeah, so that's a really great question. So with just that information, it sounds like we probably wouldn't be able to certify your products. This is because as far as I know, there would not be a commonly available sweetened dried fruit that would be derived from an animal-based product. So it just doesn't meet that qualification that we have. But if you were to sell, I don't know, like let's say like a smoothie mix or like a fruit leather bar or something like that, we could certify it, as it's possible to have animal-derived ingredients added to those products. Yeah, but since it's not, there's probably no animal-derived alternative on the market, unfortunately, it would not qualify to be, those sweetened dried fruits would not be qualified to be certified.
Perfect. Okay. Our next question in the chat says, our factory has already been through the HACCP process and we are even certified under SQF. Do we really need to do our CCPs again to get certified for this?
That's a really good question. So this does depend on your facility's classification. So just for the purposes of your question, I'm going to assume that your facility is at the highest classification, which again was a non-dedicated facility with any animal-derived ingredients not a part of an allergen control program. So in cases like this, your original SQF food safety certification may not cover the specific scope of these products you are producing. It just depends on, again, that scope of that certification. So ultimately, when you are reviewing if you would qualify for this certification, you would want to at least review your CCPs and ensure that they cover instances now of animal input contamination within your facility. It is likely that your HACCP plan probably does cover this, but I'd say you need to evaluate with your leadership team and your factory staff to ensure that this kind of risk factor, this kind of ensuring that there's no animal-derived ingredients in a product is addressed within your CCPs. If your facility is dedicated, though, I would strongly assume that your HACCP plan, especially if it's certified with a certification, under a certification such as SQF, would already include all CCPs that you may have, since it's probably covered under the scope of that certification. So I hope that answers your question. It's a little bit of a long-winded one. Yeah, so I guess the overall answer is you don't necessarily have to redo all your CCPs because many of them are going to be the same, but you would probably want to review it. And depending on the scope of your original food safety certification, you may or may not have those CCPs already established or not for this certification. So kind of a yes/no answer.
Thank you, Tony.
Of course. Maybe time for probably like one more or so, Holly.
Okay, so it looks like we only have one more, so that's excellent.
Perfect. You guys knew. You guys had the perfect timing.
So this last question here kind of touches on something you mentioned earlier in regards to bundling. This person in the chat asked, I'm already non-GMO project verified. Would this certification be easy to get if I'm already in this program?
Oh, absolutely. It'd be super easy. We like to think, at least, especially if you're already NGP verified with us at SCS. And that is because if you already are verified with us, we do already have all the documentation, pretty much most of what you need on file for your products. The input documentation required for both programs is mostly the same. Again, this is only talking about ingredient compliance, excuse me. For your facility, though, we would probably have to do a little bit more of an in-depth look at it, depending on its classifications. The non-GMO project doesn't have a strict requirement for CCPs. Actually, I don't know if it has any requirement other than if you're a non-dedicated facility. So we may need to do a more in-depth review on your facility. But in terms of the ingredients that you use in your products, again, that documentation would be very similar. If you are non-GMO project verified and you're not with SCS, we would still require all of the input documentation to be submitted because we just don't have that on file, and we do have to actually review it. But you probably already have that somewhere, or you could, of course, always ask for it from your other TA, and I'm sure they would be happy to give you that basic input documentation, which you can then send to us. But this is a really great time to say that if you would like to bundle your services with SCS, so if you would like to bundle your non-GMO project verification and SCS plant-based certification with us, we would give you a discount on both programs. So if you are dual enrolled in SCS plant-based and either or I should say, NGP or SCS gluten-free, we do give you 20% off of your certification amount. If you are bundled with another program within SCS, we do give 5% discounts on all programs. So that's pretty great. We love saving money. Also, you could get the same auditor for NGP and SCS plant-based, which if you're super lucky, it would be either Holly or myself. So sorry, Holly, I'm definitely signing you up to helping me with these wonderful people. Yeah, was there any other questions out there, Holly, or?
I think that was it in the chat, yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, with that then, awesome. Thank you all for y'all's questions and for taking the time out of your day to chat with us. Like Holly mentioned earlier, a copy of this webinar will be emailed to the email that you registered with us today. So if you have any additional questions about the certification or anything in general, please do reach out to Ned here. Again, he's fantastic, wonderful, and would love to help you. Or you can also reach out to me as well. Feel free to if you guys have any questions. But with that, I am going to end this webinar. So I'm going to say for everyone, have a fantastic rest of your week and really enjoy this summer and the warmth that you may have. So anyways, thank you all again. And Holly, thank you so much for helping me with this. I really do appreciate it.
Of course, thank you for having me.
All right, bye everybody. Have a great one.
Bye.